What up?
What is up?
So, the way that we're going to start this is we're going to first talk about some like basic things that you should be doing with your social media.
Mm-hmm.
Now, luckily, you are not one of those people for like really hot, spicy takes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not like a low tier god where, or Cosmos or Salem where I have to be like, hey, Pichan, about this tweet here. Right? So like the one thing that like for you and for the patrons to understand is that like media training isn't this like scary thing where I like tell you that you can't be you and you have to be like this like PC friendly drone. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what media training is about.
Right.
Media training is just making sure that like the best version of you is always on display,
Right.
because when we're looking at teams, when we're looking at potential sponsors,
Mm-hmm.
we want them to see the best P-Chan as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do that if like our Twitter and our Instagram and stuff is like full of like not friendly content.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
So like my first rule is that if you wouldn't say it in front of your grandmother, you probably shouldn't say it on Twitter.
Okay.
Now if you're now like of course this works for some people, like Sonic Fox.
Right.
But we all know that Sonic Fox has cleaned up his Twitter.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure like most of his Twitter is stuff that he can show his grandmother.
Right.
I think. I hope.
Most of which.
Most. Like some things can fall through the cracks, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But like the best rule I can always give people when it comes to like managing their social media
Mm-hmm.
is just like imagine your grandmother has access to your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram,
Right.
and like if grandma doesn't think it flies, Amanda doesn't think it flies.
Sounds good.
Um One of the things that I want to make sure that you're doing, especially for the rest of your time with the EXO Academy,
Mm-hmm.
is make sure that you're doing, how do I say, more hashtag oriented content.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So what that means is not necessarily, like hashtag sponsored, but what I mean is try to make sure that more of your content
Mm-hmm.
or some amount of your content is properly using hashtags.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, if you were tweeting about the Evo game reveal,
Yep.
you would be using that hashtag.
Okay.
Whenever you're like giving your live hot take or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just like talking about something, make sure that you're using the affiliated hashtag as much as possible, because that's how you get added to the conversation.
Okay. So essentially kind of like see if there's like a hot topic in the FGC, trying to kind of stick with the current hashtag for that specific topic, kind of actively using it at the time that it's
Yeah.
hot.
And that doesn't mean that you have to chase every hot topic, right?
Okay.
Like if you have no interest in like Johnny Cage being an MK11, just because it's a hot topic on your timeline doesn't mean that like you need to have a take two.
Okay, cool.
But if you do think that the Johnny Cage reveal is hot, make sure that you're using whatever the relevant hashtag is.
Okay. So
Because one of the things that when we're using our social media, especially now that you're like hopefully trying to become a sponsored player or
Yeah.
becoming a personality or becoming someone that you like want affiliate codes, you need to show them that like you actively know how to use your social media and be part of broader conversations, because if you're part of broader conversations, that allows you to show that you have reach. Because like at the end of the day, like you could be the coolest person in the world, but if they see that your social media engagement is like to 100 people,
Yeah.
it's not that good. And like
Right.
followers doesn't mean the same thing as engagement.
Right.
For example, I have 2,000 followers. However, for this month, I have around 700K Twitter interactions.
Right. Whoa. That's crazy.
Or like example, one of my friends, Barry, who works as a esports agent, He has 6,000 followers, but he averages around 2 million engagements.
That's crazy. So, like, essentially, you're kind of looking at your stats and analytics to kind of see, like, regardless of how many followers or what have you, the interactions are crazy. That must look good to sponsors, PR, anything like that. So I've never actually thought about that until recently, and now I'm like, okay, maybe that's something good to look at.
And that's definitely something that you're gonna talk a little bit more in depth with when you talk to Mama Dow, because that's kind of her specialty.
Right.
But my job is to kind of like semi-prep you for that by just like letting you be aware that that's a thing that exists.
Okay, cool.
If you don't use Instagram, which I know you do, use it more.
Yeah, okay.
There's no wrong way to use Instagram. I'm not really an Instagram specialist. Like, I'm still learning a lot about how to properly use Instagram. I do know that the Instagram algorithm likes if you post more, not less.
Right. I used to post a lot more. It's been kind of less recently. I've been trying to like be a little bit more active on it, but Instagram was actually my preferred social media for a little while because I could actively just like post the things of the moment. So I can definitely kind of brush up on that and go back to using that a lot more.
Yeah. Especially because like you do like your DDR workouts and you have the powerlifting. Like, remember that all of that's like part of your brand.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that you have slightly more uniquely to you than other people in the FGC is the fact that you like powerlift and you are big into fitness. And that's something that you can leverage as like another side of your personality towards sponsors, right?
Cool.
So that's another cool thing that you do. And like, don't be afraid to show off your coolness and all of the aspects of it.
Yeah, and I'm still getting used to that. Like, I know that there's like a lot of cool things I do, and at first it was just like showing me and the homies, like, what's good? But now it's like, okay, now a lot of people are interested in getting to know me, and I'm kind of like trying to get more confident in that. And social media is definitely one of those places where I'm getting used to it, but now all of a sudden there's like a bunch of people watching and hanging out, and I want to make my presence known a little bit better. So
yeah, so remember just to like so another like thing to be mindful about social media is it's okay to disengage.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, for example, you don't have to have push notifications on your phone for your social media. As long as you're setting aside time in your day to like use social media.
Okay.
So like if you're like, I'm gonna dedicate 3-hour sessions to like actively engaging on social media, then you don't need to worry about having push notifications.
Oh, cool.
Because it doesn't matter when you interact, because as long as you're actively interacting, you'll stay in people's presence. Now, that doesn't mean that like only in those 3-hour-long sessions are you using social media. It just means that like instead of being one of those people that is like glued to their phone, which I know that like you've talked about a bit about being, getting a little overloaded by social media. This is just a great method to sort of alleviate some of that pressure.
Cool. It's kind of interesting because I never thought about it that way. Like with Street Fighter, I obviously spend 2, 3, 4 hours a day doing that, and then I go mind my own business the rest of the day. But with social media, I never thought about like maybe just doing it in sessions. Like, okay, today I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours just doing this, on Twitter or whatever, and then just kind of going and minding the rest of my day. That's a really, really, really good strategy. So thank you.
Yeah. Just break it into micro sessions throughout the day so that you're hitting different like times of the day so that different people see your stuff.
Yeah.
But the reason I recommend this to some people is because it can get overwhelming when you're trying to like manage a social media brand.
Right.
And since you're not hashtag sponsored, you don't have somebody running your social media for you who can help you disengage. So like this is just like an easy tactic when you're feeling overwhelmed. So instead of having to take like a day away from social media, you can just go, well, today, instead of being on social media on and off throughout the day, I'm just going to say at 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, I'll use social media from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then after I do my Street Fighter session of the day, I'll, tweet about that. So that's just a great way to keep yourself from being overwhelmed.
Okay, cool.
Now we're going to get to the fun part of media training. which is how do we answer questions
Okay.
and how do we answer them well?
Okay.
So one of the biggest struggles that a lot of people have when they are in sort of media situations is they do one of a few things. One, they don't keep their energy levels high. So they fall into this trap where they feel that they have to answer things, sort of in like a very monotone and professional way, where you're never too hyped. You'll see this with a lot of players who just got sponsored in the FGC. When they do their first interview at a big event, you'll notice that like that's not the dude that you like saw at the casual setups on Friday. This is mainly because people think that interviews are you getting grilled about something. A proper interviewer should be making you feel like you're having a conversation with them.
Right.
So one of the things that I recommend for interviewers, but I also recommend it for interviewees, is to try to like have a moment where pre-interview where you're both trying to get to know each other.
Okay, cool.
Whether it's being like, hey, is this your first final round? Or, hey, do you play a game? Just to like break the ice and share some form of camaraderie before the interview starts, because you'll be more engaged with that person.
Cool.
And then instead of it being this like random dude or dudette who's talking to you, it's now like this like somewhat acquaintance.
Right.
And that will make you more loose and more excited to talk to them.
Cool.
Number 2, make sure, and if you haven't noticed, I've been trying to do it myself, make sure that if you think you're about to or like or try to actively pause when you're talking. The reason for this is that one of the reasons a lot of people aren't very good at public speaking.
Okay.
It's like not a skill set that most people have.
Yeah.
And so we aren't used to having to like think and talk on the fly. And so saying things like like they're natural ways for us to stopgap our thought process.
Okay.
So if we instead speak in sort of micro sentences at the beginning, it'll help us when we're trying to formulate our answers.
That makes sense.
You're also allowed to pause.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're also like if someone says like, here's the good one. So the reason I have this fun little notebook
I love it.
Is that it's basically a daily diary where there's 365 questions and you're supposed to fill it out each day of the year.
That's actually a really cool concept.
As like a writing prompt. I use it for media training because it allows me to ask you just like random questions that you wouldn't potentially think about. And so it helps you start to understand what I'm saying when it comes to like not saying like, learning when to pause, being okay with silence before you answer.
Cool.
So like, for example, what animal do you wish you could have as a pet and why?
I wish I could have a manta ray as my pet because, first of all, it's my favorite animal. It's got a 40-foot wingspan, except I don't think I can keep it in my bathtub.
Man, I was not expecting a manta ray. So that was actually pretty good. I heard that you paused at a moment to like figure out where you wanted to take that question and end it with.
Yeah.
And that's basically, you're not going to be perfect at it in one session.
Of course.
The cool thing is I'm going to be sending you a bunch of these questions.
Oh, yay!
And then what you can do is, or what I ask people to do is you don't have to share it with me. You don't have to share it with Persia. You don't have to share it on social media. If you want to. It's kind of like a cool way to like, how Miles, Kawaii Face Miles does the question of the day on her Twitter?
I love that.
So like, if you want to use these questions as your question of the day to like get that started. But what I try to ask my people that I'm training to do is I'm going to give you something like 15 of these as a starting point.
Okay.
And then you just practice answering them on camera.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So you do it as like a selfie cam thing, or you can do it at your laptop or your desktop, whatever you have as your setup.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a way to get yourself more comfortable answering things with a camera on you. Because that's another thing that like sets people off is like as soon as a camera's on, they're like, whoa, there's a camera now.
Yeah.
You know, it's now more official.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say another interesting thing I was going to do, since I'm required to stream 3 days a week, I was going to have the viewers come in and ask random questions. You know, not necessarily while I'm playing Street Fighter, but probably like while I'm in training room, you know, they can ask a question and I can just answer with the most, you know, confident answer I can give them. So that's another exercise I was thinking of doing, like incorporating the special skills training on stream.
Sure. So what are the top 5 foods you could never get tired of eating?
Top 5 foods that I could never get tired of eating. Number 1, Japanese curry. Number 2, bagels. Any kind of bagel. Number 3, Sour Patch Kids. I guess that's not really a food, it's a candy, right?
Sure. Well, I'll take it.
And then I'm trying to think of 4 and 5. Sticky rice and mango. And then my dad's chicken pad thai. Pretty spicy. I think those are the top 5 foods I'll never get sick of.
See that? And that was perfect, right? You were comfortable with having silence.
Right.
And that's just like number 1, it's okay to have silence, right? Where not all of us are capable of like rapid fire giving answers. Because we don't talk that way, right?
Right.
During your normal day, the hardest question you'll probably get asked is, where do you want to go get food today?
I hate answering that question.
Oh, man, all of my friends do. And then I'm the one who has to make the decision always. But like the idea is that we're not used to being put on the spot.
Right.
And so we want to fill that uncomfortable moment with like words. To make it less weird. The thing is one, if an interview is going well, like I said, it should be a conversation. But even if it's not a conversation, then you don't have to treat it like one, which means that awkward pauses are okay.
So like if it's kind of an official interview and it feels like a little bit more formal, I guess.
Well, no. So full stop, no cap, as the youngsters say. All interviews should feel like a conversation.
Okay.
Just like period dot. If an interview doesn't feel like a conversation, that person's probably not a good interviewer.
That makes sense.
Like that's just kind of like how it is that an interview is not a questionnaire.
Cool.
A questionnaire is a questionnaire. And if someone's going to give you a questionnaire, you might as well just say, hey, like, just send this to me and I'll just ship you answers back.
Right.
So that's just like a thing to be mindful of.
Okay.
So it's okay. So like, no matter what, all interviews are like quote unquote professional. If someone's asking for your time, they're asking for P-chan from EXO Academy. And therefore like there's a mode of professionalism.
Okay.
Like, one of the downsides is, as long as like EXO Academy is going on, and probably hopefully for the rest of all time.
Yeah.
But at least in the immediacy after the end of Wave 1, you are a brand for a bit.
Right.
And so like you should be treating every moment as like an opportunity to sort of pitch yourself. And one of the best way to do that is in interviews, because it can show your personality. Right? Like, we all know how smug interviews go. Right?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, there's a very specific type of personality and brand that comes with those interviews. So
Right? So that's also another thing, like, so I know from talking to Smug that like smug is always smug.
Yep.
There's no Smug is like not a character or anything. That's just like who he is, and that's how he like interacts with people. You can, if you want, have a different personality when you do interviews or when you're like on camera. Like if you want, your FGC personality, and like this isn't before anybody comes in and says Amanda's trying to get you to be fake. No, I view the FGC like wrestling. You can have more of a persona if you want, you know, sort of exaggerated qualities of yourself. Not to the point of fakeness. So like if you are not the candy sweet personality, don't do it for the camera, because then when people meet you and you don't do that, they're going to be a little confused.
Okay. That makes sense.
But I do know that you like to get hyped.
I do. And it's I'm the kind of person who I think I can't hide how excited I get about things, even if it's the smallest thing. I can be serious and composed, but for the most part, I'm me. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that if you want to like sort of amp up the hypeness a little bit, that's like super dope and fine.
Cool.
So here's my favorite part of the day, where you ask me some questions about like what you're worried about when it comes to like representing yourself. Like whether it's doing interviews, whether it's how you're using social media, anything. Like what are some things that you're concerned about or you just have questions about?
I think at first I didn't have a whole lot of concerns going into, but again, as a woman of the FGC, as somebody like a lady of the FGC, I guess sometimes I'm concerned about how the things I say can get twisted or changed when you're saying something on social media, or like even just saying something when a person is asking you a question, and they go and say, hey, oh my gosh, I can't believe Peachan said this, or something like along those lines. I don't know how to handle those situations. I think even though I'm a bubbly personality, I still do get that little bit of social anxiety about that kind of thought process. I'm like, okay, well, what are people thinking? What should I say? I'm a woman at the FGC. I have to represent us well.
So, number one, and this is just something that this is less experience from being a media trainer and more, being somebody who is a minority. Do not worry about being one of the quote unquote good ones.
That's actually a rule not a rule, but that's something I should definitely take into account, because I'm always like trying to be like on the quiet side about those kinds of things, even though I am very opinionated.
So you're allowed to have your opinions. This is something that I was talking about with Gur recently from the NRS scene. You can have your opinions. If for some reason you like Donald Trump, you can say you like Donald Trump. There's a but.
Damn.
Be very aware. No, Gur doesn't like Donald Trump. I don't want anyone to think this is just an example that I was giving him. Because he had the same concern of like, because going back to the beginning of the lesson, I said don't say anything that your grandma wouldn't approve of.
Right.
You're allowed to have opinions. Like I said, if you like Donald Trump, you can like Donald Trump. My job is not to tell you to not say that you don't like Donald Trump. Be prepared that whatever you do say, there are going to be people who may or may not disagree with you. And you don't have to argue with them.
Oh, well, that's true. The other thing about that is I don't like to, it's not that I'm the whole quote unquote afraid of confrontation. It's just that confrontation is usually unnecessary, I feel like. Most of the time, like, it's not like, I don't know, I feel like engaging with somebody who's like just trash talking or disagreeing with you is not always the right choice. And I'm still not sure how to handle that.
Yeah. If you have like a witty thing you want to say to somebody, like Kendra does, you can do that, right? But if you notice, Kendra doesn't respond to every idiot.
Right.
Right? You just like one of the things that is like really important that I get across to you and anyone else who does this, and also any of you patrons watching this, you don't owe anybody a debate. Doesn't matter if you're a sponsored player, not sponsored player, stream monster, casual, O2 drop motherfucker. You
Zing!
owe nobody a debate. Huh?
I said zing!
No, but it's true. Like, you don't owe anybody a debate. You're allowed to have your, like, just like you're allowed to have your opinions, other people are allowed to have their opinions. Mm-hmm. And if they're spouting some nonsense at you and you don't agree with it, you don't have to talk to them. The mute button is a very powerful feature of the internet. If people are saying some trash, mute. Don't block. The reason why I say don't block is because then they feel like they got a victory, and then they might make another account.
Dang. That's actually, people. Social media-wise, that's like really, really good advice. I never thought about something
because
like that.
Then they don't know that you're like, you can't see what they're saying, and they're just going to keep screaming into a void, and you're just like they're just never going to know.
Right. That's actually... And they can
be like, ha ha ha, I'm owning P-Chan right now, and everybody else is like, she muted you.
And that's kind of the thing too. Like I remember being like, obviously being in high school, or sometimes even now, like somebody gets into an argument with you, you get into some kind of confrontation, and the next thing you know, said person blocked you over nothing. Like, you look like a child. That's my initial thought. I'm like, you didn't have to block me. Seriously, we could have just had an adult conversation about it, but instead you decided to just go off.
No, muting and blocking is like so like that's the thing. Like everybody, like we've been trained, or like people have been trained to feel like if you block, you're like not being an adult because you're just not engaging people. Mm-hmm. But in real life, if some weirdo like walked up to you and started yelling at you, you would just walk away.
Yeah, totally.
So why wouldn't you just, like, muting and blocking is effectively just walking away? Because if like some stranger in the street, right, started yelling at you, you're not like, hold on, let me give you my phone number so we can continue this conversation later. Right? Like,
yes.
That's not what we do. Mm-hmm. So like, why would we give people on the internet the same power?
Cool.
Right?
Yeah, that's a super good point. And like I said, I think the trolls out there and all those people who are trying to egg you on, and the troll accounts and all that, some people take the bait and all of a sudden it's a huge blow up on both parts, and that's kind of something that I'm always afraid of happening, because now all of a sudden I have a social media presence, right? A bigger one that I originally had. So of course I'm like kind of weary of these sorts of things, and I'm kind of like learning. I'm also always watching other people debate. Like I'm like, that's an example of something I don't want to happen. So
yeah. So like one of the things, like I said, is be mindful. If the whole grandmother thing, mm-hmm. like it's funny, and a lot of people are like, ha 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 ha, ha, you're kind of right. But at the same time, it's like true of anything. Like mm-hmm. if you wouldn't like curse somebody out in front of your grandma, you probably shouldn't do it on Twitter, right? Because like, while that's why if you look at Kendra's like clapbacks, mm-hmm. they're not like super severe. They're more like, haha, look at this idiot.
Yeah.
And that's because like it still makes you kind of like, even though she's like not trying to be like a sponsor player or a personality or anything, mm-hmm. it still makes you look like a competent person.
Right.
If you're getting in a fight with everybody who starts something with you on Twitter, mm-hmm. you look like a crazy person.
And that's, sometimes I see, not anything recently, but I can imagine, like, you always think of those people that just always come up. You're like, why is this person always arguing with every single person on the planet? They could have said the same exact thing as that person, and for some reason, they're still arguing about it. Like,
yeah.
So I don't want to be that person. I don't ever want to be that person.
But that's why I said, like, you don't owe people an argument. Now, mm-hmm. to go back to one of your original concerns about, like, you represent other women in the FGC. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that is true. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't mean that you need to consider how that's going to make other women in the FGC look. Like, if every female in the FGC has an opinion, and it's not one you share, mm-hmm. you're allowed to say that. A trick to crossing party lines mm-hmm. is just be like, my personal opinion is blank. Mm-hmm. I, someone who does not speak for all women in the FGC, thinks this.
Okay.
Right? Because at the end of the day, like, no matter what you do, people are going to, like, I could give you, like, a billion pieces of advice, mm-hmm. but at the end of the day, people are going to just associate you as, like, a voice of the women of the FGC. Right. That's not your job.
Cool.
And there's no way to avoid it. Mm-hmm. The way to avoid it is to never be on social media.
And right now,
right? Like there are people who think that like things that I say represent the opinions of other trans people.
mm-hmm.
I don't. I don't speak for other trans people. I don't speak for other black trans people. I speak for me.
Awesome.
And that's the same thing for you. You only speak for you
mm-hmm.
and whoever you're currently representing. So at the moment, all you need to do is make sure that what you say doesn't piss off Persia.
Mama Persia, I don't want to make her mad.
Which Mama Persia has a pretty high threshold, I think.
Kage Persia, shout outs.
Right? But like right now, the only people you need to worry about are you and Persia. And I guess Dominion, because you kind of like reflect on him.
Yeah, he's like my mentor right now, but the interesting thing about Dominion is that he's also been away from social media for the last 4 months. So it's kind of interesting because he's a presence of his own posting stuff like that, but right now he's taking an actual break from social media, which he needs to, he's just like collecting his life and getting things together and then coming back and a newer, better, stronger Shin Dominion. But
oh man, Shin Dominion. I was like,
everybody watch out. Shin Dominion. You heard it here first. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so like that's like the only thing. Like you're gonna fall into this trapping of when you're a minority, feeling, especially when you have the spotlight on you, of feeling like you have to be like quote unquote one of the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. The only person you are is you. Like I said, if you want to say something hella crazy, like you like Donald, prepared. But don't worry about whether or not your opinions reflect on other women, on other ed players, on other Street Fighter players, on other minorities, on other powerlifters. You are your own person. And unless you work for some organization that is like the Powerlifters of America, you don't represent nobody.
Awesome.
Except you.
Cool. That's a very empowering statement, knowing that regardless of all the interests I have, I'm still representing just myself. It's kind of like, these are my opinions. I am here and I'm doing Exo Academy right now and I have all these other things I'm interested in, but I represent me and that is all. It's kind of interesting.
So like, if you get an interview question that's like, like, of course, because you're a woman, you're going to get questions every now and then, like, whether it's about something that's going on with women in the FGC, or someone might say, as a woman in the FGC, how do you feel about blank? Or, as a member of EXO Academy, how do you feel? Or yada, yada, yada. You can answer those questions. Just remember to clarify to your interviewer that you do not represent, nor do you speak for all people. Cool. Because if you don't put that clarification in, unfortunately, they're not going to either. And then that's going to go to print. And then people are going to be like, well, P-Chan said this, and so I guess that's how all women feel. And like, granted, even if you say, this is my opinion and it doesn't necessarily reflect all of the opinions of other women, unfortunately, there are going to still be some people who like didn't hear that part, and they're just going to say, well, like, she's a chick and she feels this way, so that must mean that all women think Kage players are garbage. I'm talking to you, Sarah Blast.
Oh my god. That's a good thing though. Like, that's something I think that other women in the FGC, there's all varieties of us out there. And it's kind of interesting to say, I think a lot of us miss that point. We always think, oh, our words are going to get so twisted, like by men and women. But saying something like, these opinions are mine, and I don't represent every lady of the FGC. Like, everybody's got their opinions about how to get good, what tournament etiquette is, like all these different topics throughout the FGC. So I think that's an important point, and hopefully me and the patrons, can take that advice regardless of where you are in the FGC. Like, it's not just about like the so.
Because the problem is that if you keep worrying about being the good one, you're never always going to be one of the good ones, right? There's always it is impossible to please every person. It just is, right?
Right.
So there are people who think Ed's a garbage tier character and you shouldn't play him.
I've had to hear that since day one. So I've had to at first I was like, well, I mean, I guess he's bad, but, and then as the day goes
People
on.
were like, why don't you play Cammy?
Yes, no, somebody's like, why would you play Ed when you could just play Bison? And I'm like, but I don't want to, and that conversation goes on. But now as the year has gone by and people have seen Ed in play, people are starting to be like, wait a minute, hold up though. Pichon's out here doing work with Ed. I don't think he's that terrible, and so kind of carrying myself.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as when people try to force you to defend your character. You don't have to defend your character.
Mm-hmm.
Gamer was playing Necalli when literally it was just him and Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
And people would, I literally watched an interview where, because I was waiting to interview him.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out with his wife. And, somebody was like, do you think Necalli is still good?
Oh, my God.
No! It's like when people ask Snake Eyes, does he think Zangief is good? It's yes, because he plays him. If the character was straight low-tier trash, do you think people would play that character? No, you personally probably saw something in the character.
Right.
So, also, this is just a sidebar. Mm-hmm. This is just something that I want, every player of a fighting game or video game in general as, a profession. When someone asks you that really dumb question of, do you think your character is good? Clown that person.
Clown them hard. You heard it here first.
No, for real. Because, it's such a low-hanging fruit question. Mm-hmm. And, the obvious answer is that if you didn't think your character was good, you wouldn't play them.
Mm-hmm. Or if there was if you wouldn't play the character if there wasn't some kind of appeal for you in the whatever game you're playing, right? It's right. Just interesting.
So never feel like you have to defend your character.
Cool.
Ever. That's another thing because you play what is traditionally thought of as a somewhat low tier character.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying what side of the fence I'm on about that character.
Right.
But there is perception that, Ed's not a real character.
Yeah, traditional. I mean, even since he was released as a character up until now, everybody's like, oh yeah, Ed got buffs, but every other character got balanced, so he still doesn't stand up to the rest of the cast. He doesn't contend. He has some things that make him...
I'm a Fang player. You don't have to oversell it to me. Well, I can fly now, so it doesn't matter.
I believe I can fly.
The memes when he could fly, man, that was the best day as a Fang player.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah, that's a good sidebar. Again, that's it. It's kind of the same thing. You don't owe anybody a debate. I don't have to defend my character. I chose Ed because I chose Ed. That's the end of the statement.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, if someone tries to ask you that question, you can just not answer it. And by not answer it, I mean you can just talk about the dope mechanics that Ed has. Mm-hmm. Right? You can be someone's do you think Ed is good? And you can be well, Ed has this setup, and when you hit that setup, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. I don't know shit about Ed. I watch your stream, and I'm still just all right, cool, Ed shit's happening on the screen. But, you can just, there's ways to, push an agenda when people are asking you questions that you, clearly don't want to answer.
Right.
So, if someone's hey, do you think your character's trash? You can just start talking about, a cool thing that you know about Ed. It can be, Ed's secretly gay and him and Cody are in a relationship. Did you see that in the lore? And the person could be what?
I can't believe that just happened in this. My face is just turning red right now. It's so funny.
Cody and Ed, that would not be a bad ship.
Woo. Anyway. My face is turning red because I think it's hilarious. It's awesome. It's just... Anyway.
My thing is that you, and this sort of segues into sort of the last part of this training, you control the interview, not the interviewee. Mm-hmm. Not the interviewer. Mm-hmm. You control the interview. Example, I've interviewed NuckleDu, and when NuckleDu doesn't want to do an interview, he gives you one sentence answer. And there is nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. Because,
I can try, and I can just keep asking him questions to extend the interview. Mm-hmm. But you have control.
Right.
Which also brings me to my favorite point and my least favorite point as an interviewer. You can say no.
Oh. Like, essentially saying no, turning down an interview. Like, if somebody's asking me for one, I can just say, no, thank you.
Oh, I'm nodding. I don't know if this is going to be audio and video. You can, yes, you can just say no. But here's the thing, and this goes to everybody. Anybody who listens to this, just say no. Don't say, I'm busy right now, or hit me up later. If you don't want to do it, just say no.
So just, no thank you.
Period. Dot.
Cool.
No thank you. Just say, hey, I really appreciate the fact that you want to interview me. However, I'm just not interested.
Cool.
Justin knows how to do that.
I'm sure Justin's been interviewed a jillion times, so I'm sure he has lots of experience. I was going to say, he probably has lots of experience with saying no.
Yeah, but like a lot of people feel like there needs to be sort of this like politeness. And so the polite thing to do is to say like, oh, I'm just not interested right now, or hit me up later. That's not polite, because you got people like me who are just going to hit you up later.
Yeah.
So just say no.
And because I was going to say, like, if I were to say, hit me up later, you're going to hit me up later, I'm still going to be like, oh, just hit me up later. And the next thing you know, a year later, you're still hitting me up later. So giving the short, concise, no thank you, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm going to say no.
And you can also put in the caveat, if you want, that like, let's say you're at final round, right? And you just had a disappointing, you got out on winner's side and then you O2'd, right? And you're just not feeling it, right? You're like, hey, not today. One of like the easiest ways to handle this situation is to say, hey, look, my tournament didn't go the way I wanted it to. You know, I know today's Saturday. How about this? Give me your phone number, or give me your DM, and I will let you know if I'm up to it on Sunday. The reason that I say this is because let's say like in your head you're like, well, okay, you know, I'm really tilted. I don't want to talk to anybody right now. You want to have the power to control when you do your interviews.
Okay.
And so the worst feeling both for you and the interviewer is to say, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it right now. Hit me up tomorrow. And then like they come to try to find you tomorrow and you're like, fuck this, I'm not even coming to the venue tomorrow. Which I'm not saying is something that you would do, but it is something that people do.
And
like they're
like,
just like
a terrible feeling for the interviewer, and then later on it reflects poorly on the interviewee.
Like you got a bunch of DMs or they've been tweeting at you like, where are you? It makes you look like a flake. It makes them look like an asshole. So that way it's just easier if you're just like, hey, can I have your cell number and I'll hit you. Do you have a business card? Do you have an email? Like, I'll hit you up on Sunday if I have the time.
Cool. That makes it easy, and it kind of keeps like an open line of communication.
And it puts all the power in your hand.
Cool.
Don't give them your information, because then they'll just hound you.
Oh, jeez.
Take the power.
Awesome.
No, I'm making a joke about it, but like one of the things that newer people to doing media don't understand is that like you have power. You don't have to do every interview.
Right. Now,
I say this, but if I find out that you don't do like any interviews at final round, we gonna have words.
Mama Sage knows is gonna come find me.
Last but not least, when I say that you have power, that also means that you can ask the interviewer, shockingly, what you're gonna talk about.
Oh.
Now, I will tell you that no respectable interviewer is going to give you his questions or her questions.
Right.
Now, what you did with St. Colo is a little different because he emailed you questions so that you could send back answers. That's a little different.
Yeah, it's kind of like for article writing, I guess that's still an interview, but it's just like a different style of interview, not like an in-person.
It's just easier on both of you. You don't have to schedule time, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. You understand that.
Yep.
But like, let's say Born Free comes up to you, right? And he's like, hey, I think this EXO Academy thing is really great. And now that you guys have been at final round, I'd like to, do interviews with each of you. you can say, "Hey, Born Free, like, you know, before we start this interview, like, what are we gonna touch? Like, what are we gonna touch on? Are we gonna touch on the tournament? Are we touching on EXO Academy? Are we touching on the process? Like, what's your plan?" And if they don't give you a finite plan, then you can do your gut check of like, "Hey, do I want to be put in a situation where I'm just gonna get spot checked?" Right? Like I said, it all goes back to sort of the concept of you have the power as the interviewee. It's very good to say no, and it's very good to get an understanding as to what you're going to talk about. Because they might say like, "Oh man, I want you to talk about, you know, the fact that we don't know what's going on with season, what is it, 4? 4?
Yep.
I want to talk about season 4, and I want to talk about the fact that the game's going to probably go to free to play, and blah, blah, blah." And you might be like, "I have no opinions about this."
Is that a fair answer? To say that I have no opinions about it?
But yeah, one, yes, don't feel like you ever have to like have an opinion because you were asked a question. You can just be like, I mean, you can say like, when I get asked things because I like cover esports and people are like, "Oh, what do you think about this thing that happened in Overwatch League?" I'm like, it happened. It happened. I don't have an opinion. Did it happen to the Excelsior? No? Cool. I don't have an opinion. But like, you're allowed to say that. That's not a problem. That's a fine. That's like, it's the same thing as saying like no comment. But you don't want to be put on the spot, right? Like if like it's a video interview and they're like, they start off like, "Tell me about EXO Academy," and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, "All right, now for the real interview." And you're like, "Okay." And they're like, "So there's no season 4 yet." And you're just like, "All right, yeah, there's no season 4. Shrug. Not that you don't have an opinion about season 4 not being announced yet, but just like, it's good to ask what the topics are going to be, because then if someone's like, "Well, I want to talk about there being no, or I want to talk about the rumor that's going to play, I want to talk about this," then you can go, "Well, I don't really have opinions on these things. And I'm not going to make up stuff on the spot. So maybe we shouldn't do this."
Cool. Yeah, and like for me, even when I think about that question, as of right now, thinking about that question, I'm like, well, when it comes to Street Fighter and no announcements, I'm focused on my character and my development as a player right now. So the rest of the season is not as important as what's going on right now with me and Ed. That's it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and so like that's like a great answer to give, but I was using that as an example because that's like a topic that I know not finite about. But it's the reason why you ask what the topics are going to be, because you might start an interview and you just get question after question that you just like don't have thoughts on.
Cool.
And then it potentially makes you look non-knowledgeable, which is not true. You're not a dumb person. It's just that you kind of got spot checked on a bunch of shit that you don't care about, but the camera's on and it's too late.
Right. And then that was just what happened in the moment. So, yep.
Yeah.
Gotta try to prevent.
So it protects you from having to talk about things that you're not knowledgeable about. Which is always a bad thing when you have to talk about things that you're not knowledgeable about, because then it makes you look like you don't know anything. And nobody want to sponsor nobody that don't know shit.
Right.
So we've been going at this for a while.
Cool.
Because there's supposed to be like a half-hour meeting training?
I think it's actually, for the media training, it said an hour minimum. So we're pretty much at the hour. Yeah. We got a couple minutes left, but I was going to say, we talked about a lot of stuff, and I had so much fun talking with you.
You can see the look on my face of like how...
Oops.
I think I knew it was an hour. I don't know why I remembered it as half an hour.
The trainings with Kate were half an hour, but that's because we had 2 of them. So it was one.
That might be why.
Yeah.
I think when Persia was explaining it to me, she might have intended... I think all the trainings were originally supposed to be at half hour. And then I have a feeling that she realized that you can't do a media training.
No. I mean, it's like we're pretty much at the mark for an hour, and we've talked about all kinds of stuff.
Because I tried to get it to be a half an hour, and then I was like, there's no way. Your concerns, basic tip.
Yeah, I was going to say, Amanda Stevens ain't going to speed run no media training, so...
No, because then if you go and you do something wrong, it's my fault. Nobody's gonna be. Let's be real. If you did an interview and it went poorly, no one's gonna go like P-Chan messed up. They're gonna be like, what type of media training was Amanda doing? I can't have that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I will do my best. The article was the first, and obviously reached out to you for that. But at the same time, like my first in-person interview, hopefully I can just be me and I don't lock up too much. I've been trying to use the vlog, like weekly vlog, as a way to kind of capture that and be a little bit more casual, kind of talk about what's going on instead of like being very rehearsed and like a robot and reading my sentences out of a book.
No. But that's why like, so as a recap, when somebody approaches you about an interview, you ask them what it's going to be about, and then you make the decision, yes or no. If it's no, we just say no, thank you.
Cool.
We don't say not right now, maybe later. We just give them the definitive no, and then if we say yes, then we just talk to them, like while they're setting up their camera or while they're getting their voice recorder set up or whatever they have to do. You just talk to them like a person who asked you to play it friendly, right? Because like when someone asks you to play it friendly, you don't like just go, okay, cool, and you press buttons, right? Like you kind of talk to them a bit, right? So like it's the same thing. You just like have a friendly, get that conversation flow going so that when the interview starts, you can try to like keep that conversation flow going.
Cool.
Whatever you get a question that you don't have an opinion about, you can just say, hey, I'm really focused, like you said, like with the season question, right? You just give that type of answer. Or you just say no comment, or I don't have an opinion, and you just move on. When an interview's done, you ask them where it's going to be. You ask them for their contact information. You ask if they have a business card. If they don't have a business card, you ask them for their email or their phone number, and you put it into your phone. And then you give people the benefit of the doubt that it may take like up to a week for that to come out. And then when that week comes around, you're just like, hey, what's up? Now, usually you're going to hear before that because either you'll be tagged in a tweet or something. But just make sure that after the interview that you say thank you, that you say, hey, where's this going to go? Please be sure to tag me so that I can, make sure to share it on social media.
Right.
And like I said, within a week, hit them up. Maybe you missed it. Maybe they forgot to tag you. These are all just like the very basic things for how an interview goes.
Cool.
Remember to have fun. It's all about having fun. It's all about being you. And then, like I said about social media, you're allowed to have opinions. You don't have to argue with anyone. You're allowed to mute people. Muting is more powerful than blocking.
Right.
What else is there? You're not, don't worry about being one of the good ones. You are you. You're not a woman of the FGC. You just happen to be a girl who plays fighting games.
Cool.
That's the rundown. Those are all the major points of today.
Awesome.
And as I'm telling you, and I was going to tell Romanova and every other woman who I have the pleasure of doing a media training with, just because the media training is over doesn't mean that you can't ever reach out to me and say, hey, I got this question and I don't know how to answer it, or hey, I want to do this on my vlog and do you have any ideas for me? We're already friends, so it's kind of like cheating.
Right.
But like, if you ever have anything that you feel that you like need to talk about when it comes to like media presence, hit me up and I'll help you.
Awesome. And it's kind of nice because like this whole session has been an eye-opener to kind of the things going on with like media, like social media marketing and representing myself. But you made some super empowering statements. So when I go back and, watch the archive, it's going to be really important for me and the patrons, who view this, that there's a lot of good stuff out there and a lot of, good things to hear. And social media doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can be, taken any sort of way. So that's awesome. Great.
All right. I'm going to go to bed.
Sounds good. I was going to say anybody who is watching, thank you for supporting EXO Academy. And have fun watching this. And next week, the training continues. So thank you, Amanda.
Bye, P-chan.
Bye.